Aston Villa absolutely stunned PSG, and a lot of people will feel like this moment here is one of the moments that cost Aston Villa. You can't have 4v2. That is too cavalier, but it's the exact same thing that got them to the point where they won 3-2, and also they should have won the game overall. It was so ballsy from Unai Emery. What a manager. And it was this move from the simple setup that there was these two teams to this. That change up. This is what it really, really looked like when it comes to Aston Villa against PSG in this game. It was an absolutely outstanding game of football. And both teams kind of not called each other's bluff, but there was a clear tactic from Aston Villa to play that high line. And the way that PSG exploited it initially was really, really impressive. But the sort of, not fortune, but the risk that Aston Villa took was wholeheartedly worth it, because it's exactly what got them into the game. Welcome to the James Lawrence Allcott channel. As I say, if we get back to the start of all of this, this was the setup of the two teams. And the big change was that Tielemans, or this three in midfield, McGinn, Tielemans and Rodgers, was different, with that double pivot of Onana and Kamara. Onana coming in for Jacob Ramsey, which on the face of it you might feel is a negative movement, but to have that double pivot, it meant that when it got into the sort of overall setup and the back line of Villa moved up so much and was so positive in what it was doing against a team with this kind of pace, the kind of pace that Barcelona has, that the dribbling ability of Kvaratskhelia. And we're going to talk about Hakimi and Mendes and how they scored the goals that they scored. Two outrageously good fullbacks. That's before even we can get to Dembele, the pace in this side. But what they did was really, really interesting in my opinion, because they looked to squeeze the pitch. And when they did win the ball, there was one key tactic and one key setup when it comes to this lineup, which was absolutely perfect by Unai Emery. What a manager. To go toe-to-toe. And obviously that you could tell that it was unbelievable at Villa Park. What a bloody game of football. Now, we're going to talk about tactics. We're going to break down each goal, and there's some really interesting points in it. But, I mean, at some point, you just got to go, that was a fucking good game, wasn't it? It was a bloody good game. I loved it. I bloody loved it. If you like football too, smash the like button for me. If you are a Villa fan and you are proud of your team, and you should be after tonight, and you feel like you've got one of the best managers in the land. Donnarumma was not in that position, by the way. He was playing in goal, and he actually wasn't even playing in that goal. He was playing in that goal. An absolute stinker there. Then smash the like button and subscribe to a real bloody YouTube channel. It's me. It's Jimbo. But as I say, the big change was this. This move to a much higher line, and what it meant was there was space out wide, and Barcelona stayed really, really wide throughout the game, and for Hakimi as well. But actually, a lot of the time, it actually worked out like this at times, and there was an underlapping run from Hakimi into these areas as well. But what was really important, in my opinion, was the overall block and the narrowness of which Aston Villa decided to have a go and try and get themselves back into this game. And I thought it was just so brave. And what it meant was you couldn't come through the middle. And also, I think importantly here, Vitinha, Neves and Ruiz, they weren't able to get into the usual sort of five. If you think about the first game, they were constantly sort of driving into these areas and making life really difficult. But in this game, they had to stay a lot further back. And the sort of access to Aston Villa was absolutely around the sides. And obviously that leaves a huge amount of space for teams to exploit. But if you're on your toes with it, and I've got to say, two players in particular I thought were absolutely outstanding, Konsa and Torres in this game. They were exposed, but they were exposed to take the risk to try and win the ball in that central zone and to give themselves a chance at winning the game and having a bloody go. And they did. They really, really had a go. Because I think if you think about the first game and most people stepping into this game, you're thinking there's no way. There's absolutely no way PSG don't win this game. And Aston Villa, it's fascinating to see how much a home crowd can affect a game. Check this out in terms of the average positions. This is in the first game between the two. Aston Villa, look how deep they are. Look how wide they are. Look how isolated Rashford was. And in this game, the key here was that to have McGinn and Tielemans and Rodgers, narrow and high and there to support Rashford. So he could still peel off to that left-hand side at times. And actually the third goal for Aston Villa comes from that. But to get players higher up the pitch and just to be that bit braver, if you compare that with the game today, and obviously this is the other way around, you know, you can see from the arrow here, look how much higher they are. Let's just go between the two. Look how deep, look how high they are. Against a PSG team that I believe is one of the best in Europe. There's a clear kind of weakness there when it comes to them, and it'd be interesting to see if Arsenal or Real Madrid, if they are to do it, can exploit it, and then Barcelona, if they make their way to the final, if they get to the final as well. But it was so brave, it was so good, and of course there's risk and reward with that. Let's have a look at the goals, because the goals do tell us a bloody story. Now, the first one, by the way, is one where if we talk about, you know, bodies up here, and Rashford peeling over to this left-hand side, it's actually a really, really good bit of play from Marquinhos. And actually, this could have been so different when you think sort of man-to-man matchups here. 1, 2, 3, 3v3. If Rashford can beat him there, actually, there's a fourth one you're hiding. But if he beats him there one-on-one, they're in business. They win the ball and they're on the way. But this idea that, you know, this desire to press was there throughout the game from Aston Villa, much higher up than they had been in the first game. But they break really, really well. And they know, PSG know, and they are such a good side, that it's about going round the side. And so, Nuno Mendes, who has obviously a part to play in the second goal, Ruiz knows he's going to play the ball to him and they're going to look to go. And Barcola, as you can see right here, is on his bike. And they do exactly that. Work round the sides, get it wide. Oh, wrong one. Get it wide. I'm very excited. And then get the ball in behind. And because of this high line, of course, that's your fullback there in Matty Cash, it's gonna make life difficult. And throughout this game, every goal's got a bit of a caveat here, but that high line is one that could have always been exploited. What's interesting here that a lot of people won't kind of be aware of is that actually Hakimi had just been for a run himself. You can see him right at the bottom of the pitch here, so it kind of like worked out in that sense. But the freedom that Hakimi had throughout the game was absolutely incredible for actually both wingers, but in particular Hakimi, who throughout the game was just bombing on and going into that half space all the time. Let me just show you the average position of him in this one, because you can see here, look how high he gets. Look how many times he gets himself into the penalty box. And just to touch on both of the fullbacks for PSG, their ability to understand those half spaces and to go and attack them when they could, because you had Barcola staying as wide as he could a lot of the time. Kvaratskhelia, although he's in the central here, it's because he's moved from the right wing to the left wing. But as you can see, he was often staying out wide as well, which sometimes allowed Hakimi to step into that other area there. But to get back to the goal, they then break and they go around that side, because, as I say, it was really, really brave stuff from Aston Villa, and they've stopped that central access, and so they're going to have to go around the side. But with a team like this, that's why Barcola is a really good shout for this game. And just to say, Zaire Emery, one of the most exciting midfielders to come through in the last few years, is on the bench. And Desiree Doué is on the bench. And you can kind of, and you're also like, oh, no, I kind of understand why he's on the bench. That's how good this team is. And Aston Villa had a proper go and beat them. As I say, going round the side, then playing that ball across. And here's one I'm going to chuck out there. Emi Martinez obviously makes some big saves later in the game. If you think about it, in the second half of Desiree Doué working around this side and Martinez has to come out. But there was a lot of access round the side of Aston Villa because of the high line and space in behind. But I just wonder, when it comes to this moment here, I wonder if it's any other goalkeeper on the planet, and this is kind of a compliment to Martinez, any other goalkeeper, really, I think Pau Torres just deals with it. I think he just gets rid of it, because I think he could have got there quite comfortably. But because our Emi Martinez is, someone who takes responsibility, he tries to do exactly that, and obviously goes wrong. And Hakimi, who had kind of been cheating, working his way back, is then able to go back into this area here. And it was, as I say, just to go back to, you can see, it's so different between the two teams, because with PSG, it was round the sides throughout the game. But for Aston Villa, it was the opposite. It was through the middle, which is interesting when you think of the two goals, because obviously the two goals, in terms of the shot map, were in very, very central zones when it comes to it. Second goal, again, actually, when we go back to the start of it, now that looks pretty exposing. When you go back to the start of it, they're kind of unlucky here, Aston Villa. Really, really unlucky, actually. Because, first of all, I want to show you, Mendes. Because what's brilliant here, I was thinking, why was Nuno Mendes all the way up here in this central zone? And, here really early doors as well. The reason being is that, again, this just shows how high level the tacticians are when it comes to Luis Enrique and Emery, is that because Barcola was keeping the width throughout, as soon as Fabian Ruiz is not going to pass the ball this way to go this way, he actually comes the other way. That is Nuno Mendes' kind of trigger for himself to come into this half space here. And that's exactly what he does, which again just shows we did a video on the channel last week talking about how PSG are such an enjoyable team to watch. And it's because of that interpretation that they're allowing them to have. And Nuno Mendes is a great example of this. 4 goals in the Champions League. 4 from left back. I think he got 3 assists as well. It's crazy. But Aston Villa are unfortunate. They're looking to press. They're looking to stay narrow. And because they go back, there's an opportunity to press here. So they go. Shall I use the other colour? Go on then. And the ball makes its way over to this side. Let's go white. And actually, it's quite poor. There's a pass to Marquinhos, and then he plays it into João Neves. And it's far too chilled. And understandably, everyone's kind of locked on. They're pressing. Everyone's on. And so they do their job. They win the ball high up. This is great play from Aston Villa. But then Marquinhos, again, who I thought had a great game, comes in and swoops to the aid of, I think it's Vitinha in this instance. He was a little bit off it today, I've got to be honest. Is it Vitinha? It might be João Neves. It was João Neves. And then from here, the next person we've got to talk about, sadly, as I don't think any Aston Villa player was awful. I thought they were all pretty good. But Luca Dean, for the first goal, from another angle, you can see that he's not wholeheartedly keeping an eye on Hakimi, if we're honest, although he's unfortunate with Emi Martinez and Torres in the mix-up. But here, if you watch him, it's one where it's great play from PSG, but it's poor in my opinion, and maybe a little bit of bad fortune within it as well. He plays it, Kvaratskhelia bounces it back. Keep an eye on Hakimi, because as we move it along, you see that pass there, he's going to bounce it back, and these two are going. If it's me, he's got a decision to make. Does he go to try and counter press, or does he just follow his runner? I think when it's Hakimi, I think you just got to go and follow your runner. And he doesn't do it really. He sort of half-heartedly kind of does it, and he's in between these two. As I say, the little bounce back, plays it in, and then all of a sudden, that's why we get the picture that we're talking about. But, as we said, from the starting point, Nuno Mendes, who in most teams would just be chilling there at left back, because Fabian Ruiz has come in to start it off, he's already high up the pitch. So he's sort of cheating a little bit. But because Aston Villa won the ball, then lost the ball, that press then was exposed a little bit. And that is why you now have what you see right here, where you've got a 4v2, which was the risk that they were running. And that's the game. Nuno Mendes, great play from here. He drags him across a little bit. Barcola keeping that width that we saw right at the start of this clip. Dembele constantly actually staying on the other side a lot of the time. So a different use of him. And Hakimi in this sort of half space here. I thought he was fantastic in just sort of stepping into it. Did it from minute 1 and attacks. But Luca Dean is kind of nowhere to be seen by this point because he's been taken out, which is a little bit unfortunate. Great play from Nuno Mendes to not keep running, to stand still for a second. It's a great touch. It's great use of the space and the width of the pitch, which they knew was an opportunity for them against Aston Villa with the way they were going to play. And then gets himself a goal. And so you think the game's done. You think it's finished. But I think the resolve of Aston Villa here is to be applauded. They were brave. I think you could be so proud of them. I was rooting for them because it just would have been absolutely insane. And so now we get to the point where actually the bad luck maybe they got here and there actually starts to swing its way round. And it was because of that system that we've spoken about and the narrowness of Aston Villa. Because what it did a lot of the time is it meant that the back line of PSG kind of had to sort of stay still because it was a sort of man-on-man situation. Every single goal that Aston Villa score in this game comes from this setup from Unai Emery. It worked. The high line, the proactivity, the positivity to go and get at them. Pau Torres does exactly that here and gets them. They look to press, they win the ball, and then from here, it unfolds exactly what Unai Emery wanted to happen. As they win the ball, you can see here, Pau Torres knows exactly what needs to happen. Play the ball forwards and get it to this front line. Because the front line were two things. They were direct, they were essentially going man-to-man against PSG, and they were narrow. That was what was really, really important here. And what you see is that you have one-on-one defending. Once you get in behind Vitinha, which is exactly what they did here, and John McGinn, of course, on the way, you almost create an overload against that back line. And you're going to see this a few times, that the PSG back three, whoever it was at that time, had to backpedal and were afraid to step forwards because they were going to get in trouble. And that's where they get the goal. And it comes from the fact that as a front line, they were really, really narrow. It was so important and so clever to do that. As you can see, running at pace, and then that interchange, and you've got a 4v3. Vitinha's on his way back, really, but he's taken out the game by this little pass here. Great movement from John McGinn. Tielemans over on this side here. Marquinhos has had to leave him. They're all at sea from that movement, that narrow interchange, that narrow movement. Morgan Rogers on that right-hand side if you needed him. Great little run from Rashford, which allows that passing lane from John McGinn into Tielemans. And then, okay, you could call it a bit lucky when it gets deflected. Yeah, okay, maybe it does. But they kind of earned that luck from this clever tactical decision by Unai Emery and the profiles he used. The third goal is another fantastic example of Unai Emery's masterclass in this game. Again, risk and reward, two things can be true, and they get a little bit of fortune along the way. But one thing to touch on Pau Torres again, what a leader he was. Really driving them up. Him and Ezri Konsa, I thought, were absolutely superb. And what he does here, which is really important, because if you look here, actually I'll zoom in here, what you can see is Hakimi initially wants to go to John McGinn. But because Luca Dean is told to go, that means Hakimi then has to peel off to him. And what that does, it allows John McGinn to get on the ball. Vitinha's too late on him. He drives past him. And then, again, that lineup from Unai Emery really comes to the fore. Narrow, narrow, narrow. Running in behind, you've got your back three there. Hakimi's taken out by Luca Dean on the left-hand side. And so it means that John McGinn can go, 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 go. It allows him to keep running because they're retreating, retreating, retreating. Rashford, really important run here as well. And it keeps them all tight, but also, as much as it's narrow, they're also going towards their goal because they don't want to step out, because if any of them step out, there's a pass into Rashford, there's a pass into, is it Rogers there? I think Tielemans is on his way on the right-hand side as well. And here's a great example of it. Because they've got the wrong side of him, he's able to drive. Does he get his luck? Yeah, he gets a bit of luck, but John McGinn gets the goal, and it's 2-2. And PSG were rocked. They were really, really rocked by this point. And so it's 2-2. And then within this moment, I've got to say, we go back to the start of this, it's the same thing that Emery did. And when you roll the dice, okay, around the side of us, you might get a chance, but we might get a chance as well. And throughout the game, for them to have 6 big chances, Aston Villa, in this game, I thought they were absolutely fantastic. 2.26 XG against a PSG team that has controlled so many teams. And the third goal, the lead up to it, you've got a great bit of movement from Rashford. But again, it comes from the narrowness and the profiles of which Emery decided to go for. Absolutely genius stuff. You can see here Onana with the ball. Onana then plays a ball out to Rashford on this side. And that was the great thing, I think, with Rashford. And Watkins can do it as well. But Rashford, in terms of that desire to peel off and go over to that left channel, was something that he's comfortable doing. But the difference between the first leg and the second leg is that they weren't on their own. And another important thing, Rogers narrow, Tielemans narrow, McGinn narrow. And what's interesting here is that after it's gone 2-2, you kind of got a PSG team that is in a bit of a daze, is a little bit switched off. And that's why when we move on to the next one, just how easy was that just to play the ball into a channel, and now they're all at sea. But importantly, the cavalry's coming. 1, 2, 3. And It's great play from Rashford. He's really unfortunate. Cuts on to his right foot, gets that shot off, and Donnarumma pulls off an incredible save. But obviously, it's not enough to stop them because they're on the charge. I've got the second lot. It's the same lot, isn't it? Bloody hell. Here we are on the right-hand side. And this is the weakness as well of PSG. The two centre midfielders getting done like this. Nah, that can't happen. If they want to go and win this, okay, constantly, even when Villa were sort of pushing, there's a lot of moments where PSG played some really nice stuff. Popped it about, all the great things that we've been lauding them for. I know we've rightly been lauding them. They've been really, really good. But this is just bad midfield play when it comes to off the ball. Because there's pressing and then there's being dumb. And he gets absolutely done. And then Vitinha, after that, turning his back on the play as well. It's just poor defensive play. And something that, in terms of the physicality defensively of this PSG team, not sort of pace or stamina, but just maybe being a bit more kind of switched on, a bit more sturdy in their defensive play. Rashford's superb stuff, driving, beating him, all ends up. It's just poor defensive decisions from Fabian Ruiz. And then, as I say, Vitinha, to turn his back on him like that, it's just such light work for Rashford, who then finds Konsa, who was honestly, in both legs, he is the real deal. He is a proper player. And this is a proper team, Aston Villa. They really, really are. It's a great finish. It's a deserved goal. And you think it's on. You really, really start to believe that it's on. But then after that, Asensio has a great chance. And I have to touch on this just for a second. Just to highlight that there's no reason not to be proud. But that is such a gilt-edged chance for Aston Villa. Such a gilt-edged chance. But Emery, it looked like he got it wrong, didn't it? But in truth, when you look just that little bit deeper, he was absolutely superb in the players he chose and the way that he chose to play. It was one where they were so brave, so courageous in what they did. They stuck to it. They showed mettle. They showed quality. And just maybe the tiniest time. Well, I think it's a touch of a lack of conviction and belief in the first half because they got into some really good positions. But secondly, Donnarumma just having an incredible night. Tielemans with a big header. Morgan Rogers had some great moments as well. His feet were fantastic. Superb stuff from Aston Villa. They can, walk out of the Champions League with a head held high, and it could have been so, so different.